In 1842, Charles Dickens walked into a brothel in Manhattan's most notorious slum and witnessed something that would change American art forever. A young black man was dancing with such impossible rhythm, such percussive brilliance, that Dickens wrote he was spinning about on his toes and heels like nothing but the man's own shadow upon the wall. That dancer was Master Juba, and he was inventing tap dance. But here's what they never told you. This art form, this quintessentially American dance that would go on to define Hollywood's golden age, was born from the feet of enslaved Africans who turned their bodies into drums when their masters took away their instruments. This is the untold story of tap dance, a story of genius forged in oppression, of battles fought with footwork, of an entire art form built by black brilliance and then whitewashed by history. And welcome back to African Tales by JONA-LORE. This is where we go beyond the sanitized narratives and dig into the real history that shaped our world. If you're new here, we don't just tell stories. We back every single claim with verifiable sources, patent records, historical archives, academic research, eyewitness testimony. No speculation, no myths, just the documented truth. Today, we're uncovering the golden age of tap dance, from 1920 to 1950, each when this art form reached its absolute peak. We'll expose how enslaved people created a revolutionary form of expression, how competitions in Harlem's basement clubs pushed the boundaries of what the human body could do, and how racism tried to erase the black artists who literally invented every step you've ever seen in a Hollywood musical. Hit that subscribe button right now, because once you understand the real history of tap, you'll never see dance the same way again. You'll never watch Singin' in the Rain or La La Land without thinking about the black dancers who created those moves, but never got the credit. Let's begin. To understand tap dance, you have to go back before 1800, when the first enslaved Africans arrived on American soil. According to research documented by blackpast.org and the Library of Congress, these people brought with them an ancient tradition called Juba, a West African dance that involved rhythmic hand clapping, thigh slapping, and intricate footwork. On slave ships crossing the Atlantic, according to historical records cited by encyclopedia.com, Africans were occasionally forced to dance on deck for exercise. They adapted their dances to the unfamiliar sounds of European fiddles and hornpipes, creating something new as the ships pitched and lurched beneath their feet. Once on American plantations, slave owners quickly realized that African drums could be used to communicate over long distances, so they banned them. According to the TNW Ensemble Theater's historical documentation, this was one of the most devastating cultural suppressions in American history. But here's the thing about human creativity. You can't kill it. You can only transform it. Enslaved people turned their bodies into the instruments they'd lost. They used their feet, hands, chests, and thighs to create complex polyrhythms. They kept their culture alive through what came to be known as patting Juba. Now, at the same time, Irish immigrants fleeing the potato famine in the 1840s were flooding into American cities, particularly New York. They brought their own tradition of step dancing, intricate footwork passed down through generations. Though according to dance historian research documented at the University of Michigan and in Marion Hannah Winter's seminal 1947 article Resurrecting Tap Dance History, something extraordinary happened in places like Manhattan's Five Points district, where Irish immigrants and free black people lived side by side in desperate poverty. In the saloons, dance halls, and back alleys of Five Points, according to extensive documentation in Wikipedia's article on Master Juba and academic research published in Science Direct, these two traditions collided and fused. Irish jigs met African rhythms. European step dancing merged with Juba's percussive brilliance, and from that fusion, tap dance was born. The man who crystallized this new art form was William Henry Lane, born around 1825 in Providence, Rhode Island. According to blackpast.org and Britannica, Lane was a free black man who learned Irish jig and reel from Uncle Jim Lowe, a prominent African-American dancer in New York. By age 10, Lane was performing in Paradise Square in the Five Points district. He developed a revolutionary technique, using different parts of his feet to create distinct sounds. According to documented historical research, he used his heels to create the deep tones of a bass drum, and the balls of his feet for higher, sharper sounds. So he kept African oral traditions alive by incorporating singing and laughter into his performances, layering rhythm upon rhythm. Lane took the stage name Master Juba, and by the 1840s, according to Britannica and the Master Juba historical website, he was being billed as the wonder of the world and the king of all dancers. Here's what made this extraordinary. Master Juba wasn't just good. He was so good that he defeated the best white dancers of his era in public competitions. And according to Wikipedia and historical records, he famously battled John Diamond, the reigning white minstrel dance champion, and won repeatedly. In 1840, Master Juba was hired by P.T. Barnum to perform at Barnum's Museum. But here's the cruel irony documented in historical archives. Even though Juba was black, Barnum forced him to perform in blackface, literally rubbing burnt cork on his face, painting his lips with vermilion, and putting a curly wig over his hair to disguise him as a white man pretending to be black. Think about that. A black genius, the actual inventor of tap dance, had to wear a costume pretending to be a white person's racist caricature of his own people. In 1842, Charles Dickens witnessed Juba's performance at Almack's Tavern in Five Points and wrote about it in his book, American Notes. Dickens described him as performing single shuffle, double shuffle, cut, and cross-cut, spinning about on his toes and heels like nothing, dancing with 2 left legs, 2 right legs, 2 wooden legs, 2 wire legs. What is this to him? According to the Encyclopedia Britannica historical profile, Dickens called Juba the greatest dancer known. By 1846, according to documented records, Juba became the first black dancer to receive top billing in an otherwise all-white minstrel troupe called the Ethiopian Minstrels. He toured the United States and Europe, where he was phenomenally popular. He performed at Vauxhall Gardens and, according to historical records, danced before Queen Victoria at Buckingham Palace. In London, he opened a dance school, inspiring British performers to study what they called Negro folk dance. But Master Juba's story ends in tragedy. According to multiple historical sources, including Wikipedia and blackpast.org, he died around 1852 at approximately 27 years old, likely from overwork, malnutrition, or illness. He was buried in the free section of a Liverpool cemetery, and his grave was later lost when the cemetery was bombed during World War II. For over 90 years after his death, according to documented history, Juba was largely forgotten, erased from dance history books, reduced to footnotes, his revolutionary contributions buried. And it wasn't until 1947 that dance historian Marion Hannah Winter published an article that resurrected Juba's reputation and established him as the father of tap dance. But think about this. For 9 decades, the man who literally invented tap dance was unknown to most dancers and historians. His name had been deliberately erased. Now, let's jump forward to the 1920s and 30s, the golden age of tap. By this time, But according to the Library of Congress's Comprehensive History of Tap Dance in America, tap had become a cornerstone of American entertainment. Vaudeville circuits crisscrossed the country, and according to producer Leonard Reed's documented testimony, there wasn't a show that didn't feature tap dancing. If you couldn't dance, you couldn't get a job. Metal taps were invented in the 1920s, according to Britannica, when small pieces of flat metal were nailed or screwed to the toes and heels of dance shoes. This allowed for louder, more rhythmic sounds, and opened up entirely new possibilities for what tap dancers could do. In 1921, the musical Shuffle-Along featured an entire chorus line wearing tap shoes, and according to dance historians, this was the moment when the dance became officially known as tap dancing. In Harlem, at a basement club on 131st Street, something extraordinary was happening. According to the Library of Congress documentation, the Hoofer's Club became the epicenter of tap innovation in the 1930s. Black tap dancers would gather there to practice, compete, and push each other to new heights. The club had one iron rule, documented in dance history: "Thou shalt not copy anyone's steps exactly." You could steal a move, but you had to make it your own. And this is where we need to talk about John Bubbles, born John William Sublett in Louisville, Kentucky, in 1902. According to his biography on Unique Coloring and Wikipedia, Bubbles teamed up with Ford Lee Buck Washington when they were just children, forming the duo Buck and Bubbles. Buck played stride piano, and Bubbles tapped alongside him. Here's what made John Bubbles revolutionary. Before him, according to Encyclopedia.com and the Library of Congress, tap dancers emphasized what were called flash steps, acrobatic moves, high kicks, fancy footwork done up on their toes. They danced to neat two-beat phrases, keeping it light and clean. But Bubbles, according to his own documented testimony and dance historical records, wanted to make it more complicated. He added syncopation. He dropped his heels to create bass accents. He loaded the bar with more taps, hitting unusual rhythms and offbeat patterns. T. Bubbles invented what became known as rhythm tap, a fuller, more dimensional rhythmic concept that, according to Britannica, pushed tap from the 1920s jazz beat to the 1930s swing beat. According to documented history, when Bubbles first tried to perform at Harlem's Hoofer's Club, veteran dancers Eddie Rector and Dickie Wells booed him off stage, saying he was hurting the floor. So Bubbles went to California, worked on his technique for a year, and came back with moves so innovative, double over-the-tops, triple back slides, that no one dared laugh again. Buck and Bubbles became sensations. According to historical records, they played the Palace Theater in 1922, the pinnacle of vaudeville success. They appeared in the Ziegfeld Follies of 1931. They became the first black artists to perform at Radio City Music Hall. According to Wikipedia, they were the first black artists to appear on television anywhere in the world, performing on the BBC's first scheduled high-definition broadcast on November 2, 1936. In 1935, composer George Gershwin chose Bubbles to create the role of Sportin' Life in the opera Porgy and Bess. According to documented history, Bubbles couldn't read music, so Gershwin taught him the part as a tap rhythm. And here's a remarkable detail. Fred Astaire, one of the most celebrated dancers in history, took tap lessons from John Bubbles in 1920. According to historical testimony, Astaire considered Bubbles the finest tap dancer of his generation. Now, tap dance in the Golden Age could be divided into two main styles, according to dance education sources: class acts and flash acts. Class acts, documented in dance history textbooks, were elegant, refined performances that combined tap with ballroom dancing and emphasized grace and sophistication. Think Fred Astaire gliding across the floor with Ginger Rogers. Flash acts, on the other hand, were fast, acrobatic, gravity-defying performances that combined tap with splits, flips, and aerial moves that seemed physically impossible. Which brings us to the Nicholas brothers, Fayard and Harold Nicholas. Born in 1914 and 1921, respectively, according to Britannica and blackpast.org, these brothers were child prodigies who grew up watching vaudeville acts at Philadelphia's Standard Theater, where their college-educated parents led a pit orchestra. Fayard, the older brother, taught himself to dance by watching performers from the front row. Then he taught everything to his younger brother Harold. By 1932, according to documented records, they were performing at Harlem's Cotton Club when Harold was 11 and Fayard was 18. They were billed as even younger to make their talent seem more incredible. At the Cotton Club, according to encyclopedia.com, they were the only black entertainers in the African-American cast allowed to mingle with white patrons, a testament to how undeniable their talent was. And the Nicholas brothers created what they called classical tap, but what others called flash dancing, an explosive combination of jazz rhythms, tap percussion, ballet technique, and acrobatic moves. According to Dance Teacher magazine and multiple historical sources, their signature move involved dancing down a flight of stairs, leapfrogging over each other, and landing in full splits on each step, then standing up from the split without using their hands. In 1943, they performed Jump and Jive in the movie Stormy Weather. According to documented history and Fred Astaire's own testimony, he called this routine the greatest dance number ever filmed. Mikhail Baryshnikov, one of the greatest ballet dancers in history, said they were the most amazing dancers he had ever seen in his life. Gregory Hines, tap legend of a later generation, said that if a Nicholas Brothers biopic were ever made, their dance numbers would have to be computer-generated because no one could emulate them. But here's the devastating reality, documented in encyclopedia.com and the Los Angeles Times. Because of racial segregation, the Nicholas brothers were never written into movie scripts. They appeared as specialty acts, isolated dance numbers that could be easily cut from films when they were screened in the Jim Crow South. As Harold Nicholas explained in documented testimony to the Washington Post, "We were never written into the script. They just didn't know how. They couldn't put us up there with Betty Grable, so there was no need to talk about it." Think about that. The greatest tap dancers of their generation, possibly of all time, were never allowed to be actual characters in films. They couldn't have dialogue. They couldn't advance the plot. They could only perform one dazzling number and then disappear, so that white theater owners in the South could cut them out entirely. As Harold Nicholas told Ebony magazine, "We never got a chance to do Gene Kelly and Fred Astaire routines and have songs written for us and be in the movies throughout. We would do one number and steal the show. The white actors would come on and do a whole script, talking and singing. And then the Nicholas brothers would come on and do one number and the picture was ours." This is the central tragedy of tap's golden age. The black artists who invented the art form, who pushed it to its highest levels of innovation and skill, were systematically excluded from its biggest rewards and recognition. Bill Bojangles Robinson, according to historical records, became one of the first black performers to break through the Broadway color line and work in integrated films. But even he, according to documented history in the Library of Congress archives, had to constantly battle stereotyping and racist casting. Meanwhile, white performers like Fred Astaire and Gene Kelly became household names, their faces on movie posters, their names above the title. Don't misunderstand, they were brilliant dancers. Fred Astaire's elegance was undeniable. Gene Kelly's athleticism was revolutionary. According to documented history, both men acknowledged their debts to black tap dancers. But the system ensured that white dancers got the starring roles, the big budgets, the lasting fame, while black dancers remained specialty acts that could be edited out. By the 1950s, according to multiple sources, including the Library of Congress and Britannica, tap dance was in sharp decline. Several factors converged. Vaudeville died out as entertainment moved to radio and television. Big bands were replaced by smaller bebop combos, whose rapid, complex rhythms were harder to tap to. Broadway shifted toward ballet and modern dance. According to historical records, a federal tax on dance floors closed ballrooms across the country. Rock and roll replaced jazz as the dominant music. As Howard Sandman Sims famously said in documented testimony, "Tap didn't die. It went underground." Black tap dancers kept the art form alive in small clubs, at informal gatherings, or in basement studios where they taught the next generation. But the golden age was over. The Nicholas brothers split up in the 50s, frustrated by the racist attitudes that still limited their careers. Harold moved to Europe. Fayard returned to America. They didn't perform together regularly again until the 1970s. But before we close, I want to give you one piece of wisdom that Master Juba might have understood, even though he died before he could articulate it. There's a West African proverb that says, "The drum speaks the language the ear understands." Tap dancers took that wisdom and made their feet speak a language that the whole world could understand. A language of rhythm, defiance, creativity, and unbreakable human spirit. Every time you see tap dance, whether it's in a Broadway show, a movie musical, or a street performer on a subway platform, you're witnessing the legacy of enslaved people who refused to let their culture die. You're watching the descendants of Master Juba, who spun on his toes in a 5 Points brothel and changed American art forever. You're seeing the innovations of John Bubbles, who dropped his heels and invented swing. You're inheriting the gravity-defying brilliance of the Nicholas brothers, who leapt into splits and stood up smiling. Tap dance is American, but it's American because it's African, Irish, oppressed, defiant, stolen, reclaimed, and undeniable. It's the sound of genius that couldn't be silenced, even when every institution tried to silence it. It's what happens when you give human beings nothing but their feet and their will to create, and they build a cathedral of rhythm that outlasts empires. Now, here's what I need from you. Drop a comment below and tell me, what's a tap dancer you admire, past or present? Or, better yet, tell me about a time when you witnessed tap dance live, and it changed how you understood what the human body could do. Share your story. Let's build a community of people who actually understand where this art form came from. And if this video opened your eyes to a history you never learned in school, hit that like button and share it. Because the algorithm doesn't care about truth or justice. It only cares about engagement. Every share tells YouTube that hidden histories matter, and that people want the real story, not the sanitized version. Every comment builds a community of people who refuse to let genius be erased. Subscribe to African Tales by JONA-LORE, because we have dozens more stories like this, stories of black brilliance that built the modern world but got written out of the textbooks. Stories of art forms, inventions, and innovations that you use every day without knowing where they really came from. Now, the Nicholas brothers lived long enough to receive the Kennedy Center honors in 1991. Harold died in 2000, Fayard in 2006. John Bubbles was inducted into the Tap Hall of Fame in 2002, 24 years before his death in 1986. Master Juba got a historical marker and academic articles written about him, more than a century after he died in obscurity in a Liverpool workhouse. But recognition isn't the same as justice. Justice would be every tap dancer today knowing Master Juba's name the way they know Fred Astaire's. Justice would be the Nicholas brothers getting starring roles and lifetime contracts. Justice would be John Bubbles getting his name on marquees as big as Gene Kelly's. We can't give them that, but we can give them memory. We can tell their stories. We can make damn sure that the next generation of dancers knows exactly whose shoulders they're standing on. Thank you for watching. Thank you for learning. Thank you for giving a damn about the real history. I'll see you in the next one, where we'll uncover another story they tried to bury. Until then, stay curious, stay critical, and remember, history belongs to those who refuse to let it be forgotten.